At the beginning of the film, we see our protagonist, Shayna Judson, sitting in a lobby waiting to be called for her audition. She makes small talk with another woman before her name is finally called. She heads to a different room and meets Carl Campbell, the manager of the famous singer Duke Sterling. The manager explains to Shayna why they need a backup singer for Duke, and his upcoming plans for the next tour. After that, Shayna starts singing one of Duke's songs. However, during the performance, Carl receives a call. After the call, Carl asks Shayna to stop singing, and she exits the room feeling disappointed. In the next scene, we see Shayna outside, calling her father. She informs him that she plans to visit home soon. Her dad tells her that a music festival is going to happen in a few days, so her timing is great. He also asks if she's feeling alright. Shayna tells her father not to worry and that they'll talk when she gets there. Back at the record label office, we see a songwriter named Grady Connor. The manager, named Ron, wants Grady to do a collaboration with Duke Sterling, something that Grady doesn't want to do. Duke and his manager enter the room, and the atmosphere becomes awkward. In the next scene, we see Shayna stop by a bar and grill to catch up with her best friend, Jenny. She tells her about all the failed auditions she went through. Jenny comforts Shayna and asks her to sing at her bar that night. Shayna is hesitant at first, stating she wants to take a break from music, but she eventually agrees. Back at the office, Duke is surprised that he is asked to collaborate with his former friend. The manager gives them a pep talk and tells them that they both need collaboration to advance their careers. Duke and Grady agree to work together once again. In the next scene, we see Shayna arrive at her hometown, Silverado. She greets her father and one of his friends. He notices that she has a lot of stuff packed in her car. They agree to talk later, after Shayna goes back to the house and has her rest. Later, we see Shayna at her father's ranch. Her father joins her, and they talk about her frustration regarding her music career. She asks her father if there is anything that needs to be done. Her father hands Shayna the key to his truck and a list of items that she needs to pick up from town. While running errands, Shayna spots Grady tinkering with his guitar. He is trying to figure out chord progressions. Shayna comes around and suggests he try a minor for his next chord. He is surprised by Shayna's boldness and clarifies that he isn't struggling. Grady reassures her that he knows what he's doing. She wishes him luck and leaves. Later that night, Shayna is putting on makeup to prepare for her singing gig. His father walks in, and they briefly talk about her mother. She invites her dad to watch her sing, but he says he has a meeting regarding the music festival. He gives her some words of encouragement as he exits the room. In the next scene, we see Grady on a call with Ron. He is complaining about Duke being unreachable. Ron tells him to put up with it and continue writing regardless, even if he has to do it alone. After the call, Grady enters a nearby bar and spots Shayna. He approaches her to make small talk, mentioning their previous encounter. A few seconds later, they turn around to listen to Jenny speaking on stage. She introduces the performer for the evening, and Shayna climbs up on stage. Shayna proceeds to sing a song that she wrote a while back. Grady observes her and listens intently to her song. He believes Shayna is a great singer, impressed with her, and mentions it to the bartender. The next day we see several people, including Shayna, gather to prepare for the music festival. The event organizers tell them that the event will run up until the day of Duke Sterling's concert in the same place. After the meeting, Grady arrives at the scene and approaches Shayna. After some small talk, Shayna asks him why he came looking for her. Grady tells her that he thinks she's talented, and that he would like to listen to more of her music. Shayna doesn't believe Grady until he shows her his business card. She finds out that he works for the same label as Duke Sterling. He asks her if they could write a song together, but she quickly rejects his offer. He insists that she keeps his contact information, just in case she changes her mind. In the next scene, we see Duke Sterling arrive at Silverado, and a crowd gives him a warm welcome. Grady shows himself, so Duke stops signing autographs and invites his old friend to join him in his recreational vehicle. Grady asks why Duke hasn't responded to his emails. Duke reveals that the song suggestion Grady sent doesn't suit his style. Grady points out that perhaps this time around, he might receive credit for writing a song with him. Duke reminds him that he doesn't want to argue about the same issue they always argue about. Eventually, they come to an agreement on how to approach their collaboration, and Grady excuses himself. Back in Shayna's home, we see her looking up Grady Connor on the internet. She calls Jenny to inform her that Grady is indeed a legit songwriter, who has written multiple songs for almost every artist out there. Jenny urges her to take the opportunity to connect with him. Shayna expresses her fear of rejection, but Jenny convinces her to take the risk. Shayna eventually calls Grady to tell him that she is interested in his offer. Hours later, Grady arrives at the ranch to talk with Shayna. He admits that the song they'll be writing is intended for Duke Sterling. She tells him that she takes music very seriously, despite her frustrations with her career. Grady reassures her that he takes music as seriously as she does. He insists that they work together to see how things turn out. He is desperate to write a new hit single, since it has been a while since his last one. Seeing that Grady is sincere, Shayna agrees to write a song with him. Moments later, Grady looks at a list of songs that Shayna has written. He compliments the melodies, but he thinks the lyrics could use some work. Grady suggests that Shayna should write songs that feel personal, similar to something someone would write when they are in love. Their conversation is interrupted when Shayna's dad comes out to offer them some hot beverages. He also invites Grady to join them for a family gathering later that evening. Later that night, Grady joins Shayna and her family in front of a campfire. Someone hands Shayna a guitar and asks her to sing a song for the group. She sings the same song she sang back at the bar. The next day, Shayna is back to her volunteer work, talking to Jenny. She tells her about how she spent all night writing a song with Grady, but they still couldn't come up with a final product. Jenny gives Shayna some words of encouragement. She also suggests that Shayna sings at her bar once more. Shayna can't say no to her best friend. Later that day, Shayna is back to working on the song with Grady. She asks him about the last song he wrote. He reveals it was a song about his pickup truck. He asks her the same question, and Shayna tells him it was a song about her life growing up at the ranch. To get more inspiration for the song, Shayna tells Grady to follow her. They proceed to ride horses together around the ranch. They stop by a nearby lake to continue their conversation. Shayna tells Grady about how her mom used to write songs in that location. We find out that her mom chose to stay on the ranch instead of pursuing her career. Still, Shayna's mom would always perform in different bars in town. Suddenly, Shayna suggests that their song should be about finding love. Grady thinks it's a good idea. Then he brings up how he notices that Shayna seems like a different person when performing. He reminds her that she shouldn't forget who she is, no matter where she's performing. The next scene takes place later that night, at Jenny's bar. Once again, she calls Shayna to go on stage and perform. When Shayna steps on the stage, she suddenly invites Grady to perform some harmonies with her. They start performing a duet. The crowd gets distracted when Duke Sterling and Carl walk in. Carl is surprised to see Grady performing on stage, while Duke is curious about Shayna. After the performance, Shayna wonders why the crowd is all riled up. Grady points out that Duke is there, and he offers to introduce her to him. Grady approaches Duke and introduces Shayna to him. She tells Duke that the music festival will be held on their ranch, and offers to show him around whenever he's free. She also reveals that she and Carl met last week, during the failed audition. Duke tells Carl that he failed to spot a good voice, and that perhaps Shayna should be his backup singer after all. This is when Shayna reveals that she and Grady are writing the song for Duke. Seconds later, Jenny asks her to return to the stage to continue her performance. After the performance, Shayna and Grady exit the bar. She asks him why there seems to be tension between him and Duke, even though they are supposed to be friends. Grady changes the topic, unwilling to share the story, and tells her that he came up with a few lines and ideas for the new song. They part ways shortly after. The next day, Ron calls Grady and asks for an update on the new song. He also asks Grady about the rumors of a woman being involved. Grady fills him in on what's been happening, and Ron tells him to keep him posted on any progress. Later, we see Grady singing a part of the song to Shayna as she prepares some pies for the festival. He also helps her out a little bit with arranging the finished pies. She thanks him for singing with her last night and for introducing her to Duke. Then Shayna reveals that Carl called her for another shot at an audition. Grady tries one of Shayna's pies and tells her that if singing doesn't work out for her, she will be a great baker. Moments later, we see Shayna singing her heart out. However, she stops at one part of the song that she doesn't find satisfying. Grady asks Shayna to think about what true love means to her and to describe the person she wants to spend the rest of her life with. When Shayna can't answer, he asks her to close her eyes and visualize true love. Shayna tells him that she wants it to be easy and sure because she is tired of getting her heart broken. After explaining her feelings, Grady comes up with lyrics that finalize the song, and Shayna writes it down. The writing session is interrupted when Duke Sterling and Shayna's father arrive at the scene. Duke asks Shayna to show him around the ranch, just like she promised. He also asks Grady to join them, but unwilling to spend time with Duke, Grady chooses to stay behind to polish the song. While touring the venue of the festival, Shayna asks Duke how he and Grady met. Duke tells her a short story about how he and Grady ended up becoming friends, and how that friendship led him to have a hit song playing on the radio a year later. Shayna tells Duke that the song he mentioned, A Life and a Love, is her favorite of his entire repertoire. She asks him how he came up with lyrics to such a good song, and Duke gives a dismissive answer, implying that lyrics just come out of nowhere sometimes. Further along the walk, Duke compliments the beauty of the ranch. Shayna asks him if he rides horses. She also asks him if he has time to experience life like a normal person. Duke admits that being a famous singer sometimes feels like putting on a costume every day. When Duke and Shayna return to her house, she tells her father and Grady that Duke asked her to sing with him at the music festival. Her father is overjoyed. Meanwhile, Grady smiles, trying to hide his jealousy. He's already beginning to fall in love with Shayna and is worried that this new development might put a spanner in the works. That night, Shayna and Grady talk in front of a campfire. She confesses her hesitations and anxiety regarding Duke's offer. He offers some words of encouragement that put her at ease. Grady then excuses himself so he can continue working on the song they wrote. The next day, more people come and visit the ranch. Shayna talks to her best friend and tells her how nervous she is about her upcoming performance with Duke. Her father arrives and reassures her that most of the people that will be listening to her performance are people who already know and love her. When Grady arrives at the ranch, he meets Shayna's father. The older man asks him how he really feels about Duke asking his daughter to perform. Grady tries to play it cool and tells the man that he is just worried that Shayna won't have enough time to help with their song. Shayna's father smiles at him, seeing through his facade, and pushes him to go and meet up with Shayna. Grady finds Shayna feeding a small goat. He joins her for a while. After that, he suggests to Shayna that perhaps they should take a break from working on the song, since they have made a lot of progress on it already. Shayna agrees, and the two continue to walk around the festival venue. While walking with Grady, Shayna talks about her favorite song written by him. He points out that the song she is talking about is only an album cut. Regardless, she thinks it's still a great song. She also asks him why such a good songwriter like him needs her help. Grady reveals that the label has lost faith in him, so he needs a good partner to work with. Moments later, Shayna spots a game booth with her favorite carnival game. Grady tries to impress her by playing it, but he misses every shot. Duke shows up and participates in the game as well. The two men engage in a friendly competition to see who can knock down the stacks of bottles first. However, both of them frequently miss. Shayna gives it a go and beats both of them on her first try. Later, we see Shayna and Grady singing together. They pause, and Grady points out that something is still off on the bridge of the song. During a pause, he tries to ask her to go on an evening date. Unfortunately, Shayna tells him she already has plans with Duke in the evening. She asks if he wants to join, but Grady is not interested. She asks what happened to his friendship with Duke, but once again he only gives a vague answer. Grady receives a call from Ron asking him about Shayna. Ron finds out that Shayna is also getting involved in Duke's upcoming performance, so he asks if she is really a good singer. Grady tells Ron to come over and watch her perform, so he can see for himself. In the evening, we see Shayna and Duke at Jenny's bar. They sit down at a table, and he compliments her appearance. Shayna briefly mentions the song she is writing for him. Then she starts thanking him for everything he has done so far for her. He tells her that he understands her situation, and that he is only paying it forward. A band goes up on the stage and starts playing a song by Duke. The lead singer asks Duke to come up on stage and sing the song. At first, he doesn't want to, but Shayna convinces him to go up. When Duke stands up, he also brings Shayna with him. They perform his song together, and the crowd loves it. We see Grady in the crowd, jealously watching. After the performance, Duke tells the crowd that they should check out the song that they are working on. Grady hears this and becomes upset. He decides to walk out of the bar, but Shayna sees him. Shayna follows him out and asks him why he left. He tries to lie, but Shayna doesn't buy it. This is when she finds out the real reason Duke and Grady's friendship crumbled. Grady reveals that Duke stole his song, the one that Shayna sang earlier. He tells her that he and Duke wrote that song together, but Duke took all the credit for it. She asks why Grady didn't pursue legal action, or inform the press. Grady explains that he knew that Duke was a big star that would be hard to take down, so he just let himself be screwed over. Shayna tells Grady that if Duke stole credit for their song, then she'll drop out of the festival. Grady, though, pleads with her not to do that, because he has already asked the label to come and listen to her performance. Before leaving, Grady advises Shayna that she shouldn't waste the opportunity to advance her career. The next morning, Shayna is on a stage, in deep thought. Duke arrives and asks her why she disappeared the previous night. She makes up an excuse for why she left, then hands Duke a copy of the song she made with Grady. Duke asks Shayna if there is something else on her mind. She then reveals that she knows about the song he stole credit for. Duke defends himself, explaining his version of the story. According to him, the label wanted that song to be named after him alone. They wanted to build him up as a star, and having a song with another writer didn't bode well for his image. He also tells Shayna that he regrets not setting the record straight when he had the chance. He tells her that sometimes people have to make a choice between careers and people they care about. He hopes she never has to make that choice. In the next scene, Grady and Shayna meet up. He apologizes for getting frustrated in front of her the other night. She suggests he talk to Duke, but Grady tells her that they've already tried that. He admits that he and Duke never got far by talking things out. Carl shows up and gives her a stage pass. He asks her to go on stage for some rehearsals. Shayna asks if it will be quick, since she needs to finish the song with Grady. Grady reassures her that the song belongs to them both, no matter what, but he's capable of finishing it up alone. On stage, we see Duke having technical difficulties with the sound system, so Carl tells Shayna to wait a little longer. Jenny approaches her and Shayna reveals that she feels guilty for leaving Grady alone to work on the song. Jenny suggests that she needs to decide what matters most to her. Following her heart, Shayna proceeds to leave the stage and head to Grady. In the next scene, we see Grady tinkering with his guitar. He receives a text from Ron. Then Shayna arrives and tells him that they need to finish the song. She then leads him outside to practice somewhere else. Back on the stage, Duke notices Shayna is missing and starts looking for her. When Duke asks Carl for her whereabouts, the manager tries to give a vague answer. Duke immediately figures out that she went to Grady. Meanwhile, in another scene, Shayna and Grady finally finish writing the song. Grady suggests that Shayna should sing the song with Duke in a duet. She tells him that if she were to sing that song with anyone, it would be him. She figures out that Grady is feeling jealous. Grady is stubborn. He insists that Shayna goes on stage with Duke, since he will be leaving Silverado that evening to go back to Nashville. Shayna continues arguing with him, but she is interrupted by a call. It's Jenny. She needs to go back to the rehearsal. When Shayna arrives at the venue, though, Carl tells her that Duke has already replaced her. Duke doesn't like it when the people ditch him. Shayna thinks that's not the case. She believes that there's an underlying issue at play, particularly one that involves Grady. Carl reveals that Duke does have an issue with Grady. The truth is that Duke thinks Grady is a better songwriter. Shayna pleads to Carl to let her talk some sense into Duke. However, Carl points out that if there's one person that can reason with Duke, it's Grady. Later, Shayna tries calling Grady, hoping he hasn't left town yet. He doesn't pick up his phone. Someone hands over an envelope containing the final version of the song to Shayna. She reads the contents and finds a letter addressed to her from Grady. In the letter, he thanks her for writing a song with him. Shayna meets up with Duke and apologizes for leaving so abruptly during the rehearsals. She explains that she was finishing the song and hands over the final version. Duke asks why Grady didn't hand it over himself. She explains that Grady has already left, and she also mentions that Grady thinks she and Duke are romantically involved. Duke is surprised to see his name written on the paper. Shayna reassures him that Grady wants the credit to go to him. She also tells him that she thinks neither of them are better than the other. Shayna believes that Duke and Grady are both good men who are incredibly stubborn. After a brief pause, Duke allows her to sing with him on stage, just as they originally intended. In the next scene, Shayna and her dad have a conversation. He tells her that he's proud of the woman she has become. Then he gives her the guitar that her mom used to own. Shayna can't help but be moved to tears by the sweet gesture. After Shayna's father leaves the room, she calls Grady, but the call goes to voicemail. She begs him that if he's ever back at Silverado, he should call her. Shayna doesn't know that Grady is listening to the voicemail in his car. That night, the highlight of the music festival begins. Shayna meets up with Duke and Carl and is told to perform an opening song to start the concert. Grady arrives and finds Duke. He tells the superstar that he doesn't need a new song for his album. Grady reassures him that there are many labels out there willing to sign him. Duke thanks him for his kind words. However, he also asks if there's another reason why Grady returned. Grady hints that there is indeed another reason why he came back. On the stage, Shayna delivers a speech about how grateful she is to Duke, her mother, and Grady. She doesn't know Grady is there, so she tells everyone that he inspired her to write a verse that eventually became a love story. After that, she begins her performance. While Shayna is singing, Duke hands his guitar to Grady. Duke tells him that the song doesn't need him in it to make it great. Grady joins Shayna on stage, surprising her, and they sing the song that they composed together. The duo proceeds to sing their hearts out. After they finish singing, Grady and Shayna kiss on stage, and the crowd erupts in cheer.